When did your something is very wrong here gut instinct turn out to be right? My friend asked me if I wanted to go out to the woods with him and explore abandoned places. He even specifically mentioned that he'll bring a firearm to keep us safe. My alarm bells were bleeping ringing. I asked him a couple questions, I don't know what, but concluded that it was sketchy as bleep. My gut told me not to go, so I exited from the conversation while he went asking others the same question. Fast forward a couple years, I heard that he was in prison. I was stunned, but remembered the memory when he asked me if I wanted to go into the woods. Turns out he took a freshman, him being senior at that time, and kept his promise of looking for abandoned places. He found a cabin in the woods, brought his friend inside, and as soon as his friends turned his back, bam! Knocked dead. He shot him in the back of the head. I reminisce on this quite often and think, what if I had agreed? Every time I think of this I'm very grateful I'm alive. I was walking home and a woman approached me to ask for directions. I told her how to get where she wanted to go, but she didn't walk that way, but instead walked beside me and kept pace with me. This made me incredibly uncomfortable, so I said have a nice day and doubled my speed, not running, but outpacing her significantly. A moment later, I heard running footsteps. I must have instinctively gripped my purse strap, because I held onto it as she ran by and tried to snatch it. We ended up tussling for a moment. I shouted very loudly, help! She's stealing my purse. Neighbors came outside, causing her to walk away. She did not get my purse. Laid eyes on my sister's then boyfriend and instantly hated him. I then noticed one of our dogs acted out of character around him, which made me hate him even more. We found out a year later the boyfriend had been beating her regularly. Edit, he was beating my sister, not the dog. Driving with a friend of mine through a pretty remote forest road. Couple of guys in the middle of nowhere tried flagging us down. I almost stopped for them before an alarm went off in my head and I stepped on the gas. My friend started saying what the foo. And at the same time there was a shot and a bullet hit the back of the car. We made it to a police station. Turns out there had been a bunch of people and vehicles going missing in the area that same week. Freshman year of college, a friend and I were driving across town and he stopped for gas. It wasn't a dangerous part of town or anything, just a quiet gas station with an old Buick out front. But this feeling came over me that we needed to get out of there. I tried to shake the feeling by making a joke, this feels like somewhere an axe murderer would hide out. My friend immediately gunned it out of there without filling up. He said he had the same feeling and me bringing it up too scared the shit out of him. On the way home there were about 20 police cars outside. It turns out some guy shot 2 people in a carjacking and robbery. The Buick was the car he stole. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I began noticing that my kid was having a tough time potty training. He was drinking a lot and peeing a lot. I spoke with his about it and she dismissed it, saying we live in a warm area and toddlers are likely to drink more, and therefore pee more, and that I shouldn't hear hoofbeats and assume zebras. He had no other symptoms whatsoever, happy healthy looking little dude. I tried to calm myself down, but I just knew something wasn't right. Finally I took one of his massively full pull-ups and used a Kato strip to check his urine, and then proceeded to head right to the hospital. He was diagnosed in November 2015. Got him a new pediatrician immediately. I had a bad feeling about my aunt's boyfriend. Told my mom he seemed creepy and I didn't want to stay the night there anymore. I got a bit of a lecture for calling him creepy, but she made sure I was never around him alone. And good thing, he turned out to be a child molester who is currently in jail for his involvement in a kiddie porn ring. I stopped off at a dollar store to get last-minute stuff for my niece's birthday party, foil or napkins or something. I went to the one I had never been to, in a seedy part of town. There weren't many other people there, since it was a Sunday afternoon. A luxury car pulls up and this gorgeous man gets out and starts trying to catch my eye, like he wanted to ask directions. Dream come true, right? Except my gut started screaming run for no reason. I pretended I didn't see him and got in my car and left. The next morning I see on the news that 3 people were murdered in Charleston. They were all connected to one dude, one of their cars was stolen, and the serial killer was on the loose heading west, through my area. Guess who the suspect was? Yep, the dude I'd seen. They arrested him after he'd kidnapped a girl in Augusta the same night I saw him, and she managed to escape. Still gives me goosebumps. What if I'd stopped and talked to him? In high school I came home early one Friday evening to find that my house just felt off. It's so hard to describe, but the feeling I got walking into my living room just immediately had me on alert and didn't feel right. I walked into the kitchen to find a half-eaten burger from McDonald's which I found strange. Called out to my parents, got no response. Called them on their cell, got no answer. 30 minutes later my brother called to tell me that my dad had a heart attack and to get to the hospital. Thankfully it turned out okay, but my gut quite literally knew something bad had happened the moment I stepped in the front door. At a party in college. 2 thoughts occurred at the same time. 1, wow there's a lot of people here, and 2, a lot of these girls look really young. Nope the F out. Found out later party was busted and people were in jail for a variety of things. 0_0. I was walking home when suddenly I had this gut feeling I will be mugged. I kept walking. When I got to the corner 2 guys jumped me. Started delivering some punches but man, I'm no Rocky. My shirt was devastated, my nose was bleeding. I glass flew like 3 meters away. Oh yeah, most importantly, got mugged anyway. I love my stepsister to pieces but she is way too trusting with people she doesn't know well. About 10 years ago she was living with a couple of roommates who became her best friends. She would tell me stories about them, over the phone. We lived in different cities, and I would just think, Jesus Christ these girls are messes. She could hear the wariness in my voice after telling me stories about their troubled lives and how they're really good people who have just been through a lot. I didn't buy it. I can't think of all the stories because it's been too long but they were always sketchy as hell. Cut to my stepsister inheriting $20,000 from a deceased relative. She was young and super excited about it and I knew she probably didn't keep the new money a secret. About 1 fucking week later, one of her roommates calls her panicking, saying that this guy who she's been talking to online kidnapped her and was holding her for ransom. A $15,000 ransom. And she called my stepsister for the ransom. Not her parents. Her fucking roommate. She calls me, freaking out because she didn't know what to do. I asked her if she had told her roommate about the money. Of course she did. Move out, sis. Gtfo. Those little girls who are really good people but have just been through a lot. Yeah, they're liars. She reluctantly followed my advice and thankfully didn't try to make a deal with them. I told her to call the police. If I remember correctly she didn't. She still worries me sometimes. So I had a friend who I slowly had a worse relationship with as the years went on. I threw a party at my house and my invitation's very specific. I was in one of the phases where we had a recent argument and I didn't want to talk to him. He shows up at the party, I noticed him, but my dumb brain decided I must have invited him without thinking. We party for a few hours then everybody starts leaving. Before we leave however that friend tells me to come to the basement. My basement isn't exactly one of those hangout basements, no it's a stone underground room full of cracks and a sewage drain. Alarms go off in my head, because I knew how mad and vengeful he could get and he was pretty upset after the argument. I tell him in a second I need to change, there's still 1 or 2 guests in the house luckily. I go to my room and text one of the guests about the situation. He tells me to walk the dog then when we go outside me and the dog go into the car and I stay the night at his house. Before I leave the next morning I call the police and they check the house before I go in. To my horror they come out with my friend detained. Later they me he was hiding in the basement with a knife waiting for me. It gives me chills to this day thinking about him. Edit the cop part was a lie, sorry, it was just a couple of friends with a taser.